The verse James 4:7, nestled within the New Testament, offers a profound yet simple directive. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. This scripture urges believers to a life of surrender and deliberate opposition to evil. Engaging with this verse is the beginning of a transformative journey. In today's fast-paced world where control and independence are often glorified, James 4:7 appears counterintuitive. Yet in the paradox of surrender, we find strength. The verse isn't just about yielding passively, it's an active engagement in aligning one's life with God's will. This submission leads to empowerment, a theme that is both uplifting and liberating. Recognizing this spiritual dimension opens up a new perspective on our struggles and victories. By submitting to God, we gain more than we give up: peace, strength, and freedom from the chains of our own limitations and those imposed by evil influences. To fully grasp the essence of James 4:7, it is essential to contextualize it within the larger discourse of James's letter. James, a leader in the early Christian community, wrote to believers scattered across nations, urging them to live out their faith authentically and vigorously. He addresses conflicts, temptations, and trials, pointing out that the source of these struggles often lies within our desires and inclinations. The verse calls for a submission to God as a foundational step in overcoming these internal and external battles. Submit yourselves therefore to God. This part of the verse emphasizes a voluntary, conscious decision to align one's will with God's. It involves a deep trust in His goodness and sovereignty, a trust that says, "Your will is better than mine. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you." The assurance in this statement is striking. This resistance is made possible through the strength gained from submission to God. Understanding James 4:7 requires a balance of humility and courage. Surrendering to God, as suggested in James 4:7, may seem like giving up control, but it is actually the way to true empowerment. When we relinquish our own plans and trust in God's, we are not left powerless. Rather, we are endowed with divine strength. By submitting to God, we align ourselves with the infinite power that created the universe, a source of unimaginable strength and wisdom. This empowerment is not just spiritual, but manifests in practical, everyday situations. When faced with decisions, big or small, submission to God provides clarity and peace. It transforms our perspective, helping us to see beyond immediate gratifications to the lasting joy of a life lived in accordance with divine principles. Moreover, surrender to God cultivates a fruitful relationship with Him. Spending time in prayer, reflection, and reading Scripture deepens our understanding of His character and will. The freedom that comes with this surrender is profound. Applying James 4:7 in everyday life begins with a decision to submit to God each morning. This can be as simple as starting the day with a prayer of surrender, acknowledging God's sovereignty, and asking for His guidance throughout the day. Incorporating this verse into daily decision-making is another practical step. Before making choices, whether they are about career moves, relationships, or even small daily interactions, pause to consider God's will. Resisting the devil is integral to applying James 4:7. This resistance can be practical, like avoiding situations or influences that lead to temptation. Sharing our journey of submission and resistance can be a powerful testimony to others struggling with similar issues. Throughout history, countless individuals have experienced the transformative power of submitting to God as outlined in James 4:7. One compelling example is the story of John Newton, a former slave trader who surrendered his life to God while facing a severe storm at sea. This act of submission was the beginning of a radical transformation that eventually led him to become a Christian minister and the author of the beloved hymn, Amazing Grace. Newton's story is a dramatic illustration of how surrender to God can turn a life around. His subsequent resistance to the evils he once practiced led to significant contributions to the abolitionist movement. In more everyday contexts, there are stories of individuals overcoming addiction, healing broken relationships, and finding peace in tumultuous circumstances through submission to God. Sharing these stories within the community can be incredibly impactful. In a modern context, James 4:7 remains as relevant as ever. The challenges and temptations we face today might look different from those in the early Christian communities, but the spiritual principles remain the same. In an age dominated by materialism, individualism, and a myriad of distractions, submitting to God provides a necessary anchor and a countercultural stance that prioritizes spiritual well-being over worldly success. For the modern believer, living out James 4:7 could mean choosing integrity over convenience in the workplace, fostering genuine relationships over superficial connections, or prioritizing spiritual growth over endless entertainment. These choices resist the devils of our time, greed, isolation, apathy, and moral relativism, and align us more closely with God's kingdom. Social media, blogs, and podcasts can be used to share personal stories of faith and resistance, spreading the message of James 4:7 far beyond traditional church walls. This digital evangelism allows us to connect with others across the globe, offering hope and encouragement in a world hungry for authenticity and purpose. Lastly, in these uncertain times, the promise that the devil will flee when resisted gives hope and courage. James 4:7 is not just an ancient text, but a living, breathing directive that continues to inspire, challenge, and guide believers today.